Jesus told the disciples, "If any want to become my followers, let them deny themselves and take up their cross and follow me. For those who want to save their life will lose it, and those who lose their life for my sake will find it." So we find ourselves now into Lent, and there is an aspect of our lives that we are wanting to lose. And I wanted to outline a sort of a step-by-step process for losing one's life, so that you can reference it as the season unfolds. First of all, what we're trying to do is not lose our entire life. But if you think about an aspect of yourself that you no longer want to be part of how you proceed, so when you remove that piece, then in a sense it's kind of a new life, because it's like a life without that thing. And I was meditating and thinking about how if you've ever broken up with somebody, or you made a large life change or decision, you've moved to another city, or you've changed jobs or something, there's an adjustment period to this new you without that thing that used to be very much part of your life, whether it be living in this house, or living with this person, or living with this pet, or what have you. So you discover a new you without something. And that's really what we're trying to do here. We're discovering an aspect of ourselves that we would like to let die. Letting something about yourself die is a very unnatural process. Even if you are the one who breaks up with somebody, you will often find yourself questioning whether that was a good thing. I like these things about being with them. Maybe I made a wrong choice. Maybe I should go and reconnect and see. And then usually if we do, we realize, oh man, this was a mistake, because we've kind of moved on. But it's still very difficult. It's not natural to let something die. Now, if you know the process, then you can sort of cling to that at those times when your mind wants to present uncertainties and makes you want to doubt your decision, which is very much part of how this goes. So there is an acronym for this, it's an awkward acronym, but I'll share it with you anyway. I'll give you through the letters, and then we'll say it together. On 3. So the first stage is the investigation. And this is where you are exploring whatever this aspect of yourself is that you wish to let die. It's very difficult and not practical to go, okay, I'm going to stop doing this, and then just by your sheer will, resist the temptation to do it. It can be done, but the deep transformation will elude us, because we do need to understand what is it about this thing that I've done, or this way that I've been, that has worked for me. If you take something like being an alcoholic, we have to acknowledge that it did serve a function. To drink and to sort of retreat from the pressures of life, or to be shielded from my emotional pain, the alcohol did it. And so, if I'm honest, I go, it didn't completely fail, except the health benefits and the the health repercussions and the emotional, sort of pain of it. I don't want that. So I have to be able to go, what am I trying to escape from? How does this serve me? What really is at the root of this behavior? What is this behavior trying to protect me from? What is this behavior trying to induce in others? What is, et cetera, et cetera. That tends to be the most fun phase, because first of all, it's all about me. I get to look at myself, and I get to investigate things. And I'm not really pressuring myself to change just yet. And I do encourage you not to try to change it too early. That you got to spend some time to really get to the root of what this is. Now, the temptation is you can linger in that phase, because we know the next phase is going to be about the harder work. And so we can stay there and go like, I'm not really sure I totally understand it. And it's helpful to get information or some guidance from a priest who can go, okay, you've seen what you need to see. So then we move to the decision phase. Now, the decision phase may seem obvious. Well, of course I want to. It's amazing how many times I've said to people, well, do you want to change that? And they say things like, well, I must. I should, right? And I know when they go into that kind of way of responding that they're nervous, because some of them, part of them doesn't necessarily want to completely let it go. I mean, it's hard to get to a point where you completely want to. And for those of you, I mean, I know all of you have overcome alcohol, so you know that there is still part of you that wants to do it, and that part can linger for a long time. It may be way, 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 way back deep where it's like, well, I remember that there were some good times. But we just don't surrender to that. We don't juice that. So it doesn't have to be like you are completely 100%, but enough of your will has to be completely decisive. Because without that, when it gets difficult, the mind will erode at your process and you will probably slip back. That's different than if you are really committed and you have, a slip up. I mean, we're talking about sometimes very subtle behaviors that have been part of your vocabulary and how you've thought and how you've moved and how you breathe. And you may all of a sudden find yourself emotionally a little bit more compromised and you go, oh man, I'm right back where I didn't want to be. That's very different than somebody who's secretly harboring a back door for when it gets really tough, they want to be able to access the behavior. So we have to be discerning. We can't hate ourselves if we have a bit of a slip. And we also can't make the excuse like, oh, that was just a slip, when really I was planning to do that all day. I was sort of secretly setting up my day where I could be alone and indulge in something. So there's a lot of responsibility in that. How honest are you willing to be with yourself? But let's say now you sit in meditation, you've investigated all the information that you brought in, you can see the pattern more clearly, you can see how it served you, you can even honor how it served you. So you don't disdain the fact that you've lived a certain way, but you go, I made that choice based on limited guidance, and it was the best choice I could have made, and then it became part of how I lived, and okay, now I want to live a different life. So I'm making the decision. The decision is to then implement a new process. So that's the third. We got investigate, decide, implement. Now, one of the keys to implementation is setting up to fill the void that will exist when you remove something. Here's a very simple example. Let's say you have somebody who typically works hard, very responsible, pays their bills. When they get home from work, they like to open a beer and sit and watch TV, make dinner, watch TV for like 4 hours or something, and start to go to bed maybe around 10:30. Nothing really wrong with that, you could say, but on most nights it goes from 1 beer to 2 beers. When it gets towards the end of the week, it's 3 beers. And typically the TV shows that this person watches are, kind of frivolous or violent or disturbing or just, entertaining. And at some point the person's like, my life is withering away, I don't do anything. And I've gained 15 pounds from drinking beer, and I don't want this anymore. So you think they just get home the next Monday after work and everything is fine? No, I mean, there's the TV, there's the beer. It's like the whole room is set up for them to continue. So they have to create alternative ways for them to use their time. And that's difficult. The implementation of that, it's so easy to just grab the remote, grab the beer, put the dinner in the microwave oven, and it all just works. It's so fluent. And I like it. It's enjoyable. I go to work, I pay my bills, So the mind starts to go like, wait, what are we doing here? And then oh yeah, I made a decision. So now I got to, maybe I got to go to the fridge and throw out all the beer. I thought, well, that doesn't make sense. That's kind of wasteful. Well, what are we trying to do here? You get into this logistical kind of situation. Well, how am I supposed to? It's Monday night in the middle of winter. What am I supposed to do with my time? The implementation requires a lot of action. Now that's kind of a very physical example, where it wouldn't be that difficult to say, okay, what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the TV down, so the TV won't be there. I'm going to get rid of all the beer. I'm going to sign up for a class. I'm going to join a gym. I'm going to force myself to fill my schedule. Now, that leads to, the next acronym is PPP. Pain, prayer, perseverance. It is painful. When you're in the implementation phase, there's withdrawal from what you have been allowed to do freely. Even though you know it hasn't served you, it has gratified you in some way. And so there's going to be pain when you deny yourself. That's really what I feel Jesus is saying when he says, deny yourself. So do not let yourself indulge in the behavior that you have decided you don't want. It's not necessarily, sometimes I think, people who are not interested in Christianity go like, well, what am I supposed to have no joy in my life? I have to deny myself everything that's enjoyable? I mean, when you live the path, you go, no, that's not what's being asked of me. What's being asked is to deny the indulgence in this thing that I want transformed, coupled with pick up your cross. Now, I don't know if you realize it, but when Jesus was being executed that day, he had to carry this cross from the old town of Jerusalem to this place called Golgotha, which is apparently about 1.5 miles. And if you've ever carried, a 4x4 post or a 6x6 post, you can drag it along. Everybody in this room could drag a 6x6 post or even 2 posts, but it's a lot. Then add in the fact that he's been beaten basically where most of his blood is drained out of him. He's feverish, he's sick. That's symbolic of the agony that this can bring about. You deny yourself, and then you have to go through the very difficult process, bearing the cross of your decision. And that cross is the very thing which holds the sacrificed life, right? So you're carrying it to the place, and Golgotha, the translation of Golgotha is the place of the skull. So ultimately, the transformation is in the mind. And I know you guys have talked about the mental obsession with alcohol. So you understand that there's this part of myself that thinks that's the only thing that will relieve me. And maybe up to that point in your life it has been. And it's the same with the behaviors that we're seeking to get rid of. That they have quelled whatever pain that life has delivered by being withdrawn or by being controlling or by being pessimistic or by being obsessive or whatever it is. That has worked. We've already acknowledged that way back in the investigation phase. And then we remind ourselves we made the decision. So that when the mind starts to go like, yeah, but who's going to know and what does it matter and why even do this? And we go like, because I believe. I believe in the new life. So there's pain. Prayer is very essential. You'll find that there are waves of temptation, but they subside. It's only constant temptation if you haven't fully decided. If you haven't decided, then it's like that back door is always somewhat cracked open and you're like, I don't know if I can do this. Yeah, we don't know if we can do it alone, so we pray for help. But the decision has to be firm. The perseverance is just, you don't know how long it's going to take for the temptations to subside. Because there'll be a point where the temptations are much more distant. I think you guys can relate to that when it comes to the phases of how much craving is there for alcohol. In the first year, probably a lot more than in the second year. If you're around people who are drinking, if you're around the smell of it, of course the temptations are going to be stirred up again. If you keep yourself out of the wine aisle at the grocery store and you stay away from bars and you stay away from environments that celebrate drinking, you'll find that your memory of it is probably like, it was mostly bad, but it worked for a period of my life. And the same thing with whatever these behaviors are, which are probably going to be way more subtle. But you persevere, and you will find that slowly, maybe sometimes in large chunks, the temptations will fade. And this is really over the 40-day period, this is what we want to happen. So it's long enough that we're going to get to another phase of it. You're going to get to the hardest part if you're really decided on it and you've prayed and you're really denying yourself and you've implemented new things to do or new mental attitudes or new emotional patterns. You will find over 40 days, because this is the time when it's supported by the grace of the Almighty, that you will get to a point where it becomes realistic that this could be finished. It's different than a sort of the worldly approach to Lent, which is I give up alcohol for 40 days and then on the 41st day I drink again. That is not a transformational process. You could say it's sacrificial, but I'm not sure the meaning of it. The person may just go, well, that's what I'm supposed to do, so I do it. And I like it because for 40 days, I don't drink, I save some money, I'm a little healthier, I generally lose a couple of pounds. No problem with that. We want the pattern to change permanently. We want this thing in us to die. And then we arrive at the success. And that's what Easter really is about. We concluded with a 2-day fast. And so what's beautiful about a 2-day fast is that, okay, it is difficult. You're not used to it. But when we sit here on Sunday, Easter Sunday at 7 a.m., like we're all in this thing. We're all like relating to the fact that we can't wait to eat. We've gone through something over the 48 hours. And that's just sort of like a cool way to culminate the whole Lent process, so that we celebrate and we feast, and it's like great relief and it's a great joy, and everybody gets to make good food. And even making the food can be difficult when you haven't eaten for 2 days. I understand all that. But it's just such a cool thing to really sort of end the whole season with this feast and this celebration, because it's meaningful. And then as you continue on, you're like, okay, this has changed. It's not to say it's completely gone forever, but you will experience, unless you slip back in your decision, you should be able to feel a new life in you. Think about this guy who maybe was watching TV for years and years and drinking 3 beers a night or 2 to 3 beers a night. And he goes to the gym and he starts to, after 2 weeks, he's like, oh man, I've lost some weight and I'm taking this class. Maybe he's taking a meditation class. And he's like, okay, this is kind of opening up my eyes. And then suddenly he's like looking at the TV going like, man, I can't believe that. I used to just sit here, watch, whatever, The Wives of Beverly Hills, and then I watch Jeopardy. And then just like, it wasn't all bad, but man, like, it just feels like not who I am anymore. And that's a beautiful thing. To recognize that you have transformed something. Don't forget the grace. We need help, and so we pray for the help. We cannot just do it by our own will. You will see that it's a beautiful thing when you get to the end and you give glory to God, because you realize that there were graces along the way that got you there. So a quick recap. Investigate whatever it is that you're wanting to die. Make a firm decision. Implement consciously, intelligently, discerningly new patterns, new activities, new ways of thinking. Prepare for the pain. Implement or use prayer. And persevere throughout the period as long as it takes. And then success awaits.